Hello and welcome to State Matters. I'm your host, Matt Muratore. Today we'll be discussing our number one industry, tourism, and specifically the upcoming 400th commemoration of the Mayflower Voyage and the founding of Plymouth Colony. Our first guest is known to all. She brings years of tourism, marketing, and leadership experience to the helm at Plymouth 400 Inc., the organization formed to lead the planning and execution of programs and events commemorating the 400th anniversary. Please welcome Michele Pecoraro. Our second guest has served as Executive Director of the Massachusetts Cultural Council since April 2007. She is the Commonwealth's highest-ranking cultural official, overseeing a range of grant programs, services, and advocacy for the arts, humanities, and science in communities across Massachusetts. She has raised the visibility of nonprofit creative sector as a driving force for growth and prosperity in Massachusetts. She led advocacy for the Mass Cultural Facility Funds, which has invested $82 million in arts and cultural building projects statewide over 8 years. Before coming to Massachusetts, she was the director of the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs for 7 years, serving as executive director of the Iowa Arts Council, a minister of the State Historical Society, and a State Historic Preservation Officer. She's a native of California and a graduate of the University of Arizona. Please welcome Anita Walker.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for joining us today.
Thanks for having
Michele,
us, Matt.
I see you all the time. Anita, it's great to see you, and
Thank
thank you
you
for coming to Plymouth. We appreciate that.
Delighted, my pleasure.
So we usually start our show with, who you all are. So we'll start with you, Michele. For
Sure.
the few people that probably don't know who you are, give a little bit of background of who you are,
Sure.
what you've done in the past, et cetera.
Sure. Well, I'm a South Shore girl. I've lived on the South Shore in various places all my life. So I have a real, love for this area, and especially Plymouth. I really started my career as an educator and moved on through business, worked at Pilgrim Healthcare. Do you see a little, something starting here? I was there for 10 years, and then I moved on to Plymouth Plantation. And I worked at Plymouth Plantation in the capacity of marketing for about 7 years total.
What years were those? Because
I was there from 1998 through about 2007.
Okay. It seems like everyone in tourism in this area has gone to Plymouth Plantation and then branched out.
It's true, and we always joke that Plymouth Plantation has a really rich alumni group. And should be treated like an alumni group because, we have all these great...
What a great alumni event that would be, though.
And we talk about doing it all the time. We just haven't done it yet. Maybe 2020 is the time to do that.
Or maybe 2021.
Maybe, maybe 2021.
You got enough going on.
Yeah,
what did you do in education?
I was a teacher. I taught
didn't know that.
secondary ed. I taught high school. I taught English, public speaking, and theater arts.
Around here?
Actually, yes, in Marshfield, at Marshfield High School for about a year. In fact, some of your colleagues were some of my students.
Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Jim Cantwell.
Is that
and
right?
also our sheriff, Joe.
Is that right?
Was also one of my freshman students.
Wow, I didn't realize you were that old.
I am.
Well, you look
I'm
great.
just well preserved.
I'm just
So
kidding.
I went from, and I loved teaching, but
Yeah.
we had a lot of issues at the time where people were getting laid off, and I taught at a private school in Waltham as well.
Oh, terrific!
For a while.
That's great.
But I then went to the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce as vice president of operations and special projects and international marketing. And then I came here from
You came
there.
here in 2013, correct?
2014,
yeah,
March.
2014, yeah.
So this is my second year this March.
God, it seems like a lot longer
know.
than that.
It was a
doesn't
minute ago.
Yeah, I know.
What happened?
Yeah. So Anita, I read a little bit about, and I actually cut your bio back, but you've got a fascinating background. But talk about your background and what you do.
First of all, I have to say that my favorite place I've ever lived, and I know you mentioned a few states going by there, but I absolutely love living in Massachusetts. I feel like it is so compact and it is so rich with history and culture. You can't get bored for a minute here in Massachusetts. You just can't have enough time to see everything that there is. I grew up in Southern California, and meandered around, lived in Arizona when I was going to school there, but I ended up raising my two boys in Iowa. That's that rectangular state in the middle of the country.
We hear about that every 4 years.
Every 4 years, it kind of rises in prominence. And actually my first job was as a weather girl in 1979. That was the job title. That was before they invented meteorology, before you had to actually know anything about the weather. And I worked in television news for about 15 years.
Is that right?
And then I aged out in my 30s and went to work for the Iowa Department of Economic Development, which I did for about 8 years. And eventually transitioned into the nonprofit cultural sector as a fundraiser and development officer, and eventually went to work for Governor Vilsack at the Department of Cultural Affairs. And then from there came here to Massachusetts in a similar capacity. So the trajectory was really about communications, which is a big part of my job. The background in economic development gave me a different way to look at the role of arts and culture and how it creates prosperity in our cities and towns. And so this job just combines the best of everything. What I love about Massachusetts, it has everything and more than California.
Absolutely.
And closer together. You
Yes.
don't have to drive as far or
Yeah,
get in as many
yeah.
traffic jams.
What
Right.
brought you to Massachusetts, though?
So this job, actually,
was okay.
exactly. They were doing a search, and Governor Vilsack had decided, as so many do in Iowa, to run for president for a short period of time. So it was a governor-appointed position, so we were all looking for something else, and this came open, and it was a perfect move for me. But I'd never been to New England.
Is that right?
Wow.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the one place I knew about, even growing up in California, Plymouth.
And why is
I-
that?
Because of the history, because of the story of the Mayflower and the Wampanoags, because of the very story we're just about ready to celebrate in 4
Right.
years. So even as far away as you can get from Plymouth, Massachusetts, this is an iconic place that
Yeah.
means a lot to everybody in this country.
Yeah.
Right.
So this show talks about why the state matters in what we do locally. So talk about that, Michele.
Sure.
How Anita and others in the state have impacted what you're
Absolutely.
doing here.
Well, first of all, Anita Walker is, she's an amazing woman. She's accomplished so much, but she's also, she's a no-fear kind of administrator. And I really enjoy that about her. But Anita's one of our biggest fans, on the state level. She's been extremely helpful. She came to Plymouth, UK with me last June to kind of check out what all the hoopla was about, and met the U.S. ambassador to the UK. Among other people, and Mayflower 400, our counterparts over there. So that really kind of sparked our relationship. And Mass Cultural Council, it is a godsend for many nonprofits, most nonprofits. And when you look at tourism in the state of Massachusetts, because what you said is very true, it's a lot of stuff compact, and none of it is Disney. None of it is man-made. It's all the authentic places. The history and culture of the fabric of America is right here. And so the Mass Cultural Council has a huge job, because almost every single one of those entities is a nonprofit organization. In other words, not supposed to make a profit. So how do you then, if we're such a big part of the economy, nonprofits, then how do you boost your economy through these nonprofit organizations? And I think the Mass Cultural Council has found several ways to do that through the Cultural Facilities Fund, which was a huge help to so many of our Plymouth organizations and organizations all over the state. So that's one way. Another way is I work with people like you, Matt, and because I have your cell phone number. I text you. I mean, I text Vinny. I make sure that that I am keeping the lines of communication open. We work together on what we should think about in terms of what would the funding investment be for a commemoration like this one, and we talk a lot about that. And why would the state give tax dollars to some organization like this one? And I think we have a lot of really great, justifications for that, but not the least of which is it's an investment in a very important industry, and that is the cultural and heritage tourism industry. And this state, it's the third largest industry in this state, and it really is built upon those cultural institutions.
Yeah, absolutely. Anita, can you explain, how long has the Cultural Council been around? Can you explain how it works, how it functions?
What a great question, because next year we are going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary, the Massachusetts Cultural
It's been around
Council.
that long.
It has
Wow.
been around that long. It came, the National Endowment for the Arts is this year celebrating its 50th. And that's what really gave birth to the state arts agencies all across America. The National Endowment for the Arts, which is federally funded, provides funding for all of the state arts agencies that we then use as part of our re-granting in our budget. So that's where states all across America had an opportunity to tap into some of those federal funds to support the arts in their state, and that's why a lot of our state arts agencies were born. We in Massachusetts, though, I'm so proud. I have a chance to meet with my colleagues from across the country, and what we have here, I think, is really second to none.
And why is that?
Well, first of all, as I started to say earlier, we are so rich in cultural assets and treasures that are Massachusetts treasures, but are national treasures, and as we discovered in the UK, are international treasures. People want to come from all over the world to see what we have here in America, where democracy was born, where it all began, and that's right here in Massachusetts. We fund 400 nonprofit cultural organizations in the arts, humanities, and sciences in every single corner of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We have 329 local cultural councils that cover every square inch of the Commonwealth, and these are local councils with local decision-making around local grant-making. We provide the funding, and people in your neighborhood and your own backyard are making decisions on where to invest those funds locally. It is the largest grassroots arts infrastructure in America right here in Massachusetts. Beyond that, we invest in communities. Plymouth is one of, we are proud to say, one of our 32 cultural districts.
That's right.
I think Plymouth was the 27th, I think, at the time.
Yes, and we actually did something a little extra special for Plymouth because we were wanting to make sure that you had your cultural district designated in time for all the November activities last year.
Right.
So we had a special vote of the Mass Cultural Council in order to get that done in time for Plymouth. And really, as part of the infrastructure and planning for the wonderful activities and events that are going to be taking place between now and 2020 and beyond. We fund education. We have an amazing program that is literally transforming the lives, and I would say saving the lives of thousands of adolescents in every corner of Massachusetts through our Youth Reach and Sarah Sarah programs, which are really focused on adolescents at risk. We send something like 70,000 children on school buses to cultural destinations every single year. One of the top destinations, of course, is Plymouth Plantation.
True.
And you know,
so that helps pay for those.
Absolutely, we help pay for those.
Yeah.
We help pay for those field trips. And you know, you could think, well, field trips, they're among the first things that are cut when a school district is really suffering financially. And we were noticing that. And why is a field trip important? Well, it's real sticky learning. You know, when a kid is actually experiencing something, they're much more likely to remember it than what they unfortunately read in the book in the classroom. But it's also, for us, a bit of an equity issue, because not every child in Massachusetts have parents with the capacity or ability to make sure they take their child to a symphony concert, to an art museum to say see a master work of art. And that field trip may be the only time in their life they'll have an opportunity to have that experience. And for some kids, it's going to be life-changing.
Sure.
It's going to make all the difference in the world. So we love our Big Yellow School Bus program, which is taking kids on field trips. We fund artist fellowships. We believe in investing in the work of our wonderful artists, which are really the backbone of the work. The Cultural Facilities Fund, which, by the way, I'm happy to report we're just about ready to up the number to $91 million of investment in cultural infrastructure. No other state in America is doing that.
And where does that funds come from?
Those come out of the capital budget, the state capital budget.
Okay.
So the legislature, as you know, gives the governor authorization to include various things in the governor's capital budget, and then the governor makes the decision. And this year he invested $10 million that we are in the process of making awards, which I can't announce yet, but will be soon forthcoming. This is literally, the Cultural Facilities Fund has created in the neighborhood of 15,000 construction jobs in the course. That means construction workers, architects, engineers, designers, all the people whose work comes into play around a facility. And so much of the work that we're doing is really what we call deferred maintenance. You know, you can't hang a plaque on a new HVAC system in the basement. These are projects that are very, very difficult to raise money for, but they're absolutely essential in terms of the ongoing work of the organization. So we take care of it's being a good steward. It's being a good steward of our cultural assets and our cultural treasures. So that's really a lot of it. But it has absolutely brought back to life a lot of downtowns and main streets across Massachusetts. One great example is Worcester in the Hanover Theater, which was a real early project of ours. And it has attracted literally hundreds of millions of dollars in investment in and around revitalized theater in downtown Worcester. And we have many stories.
You see commercials for it a lot, too, the different plays and shows that are there now.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, there's an economic development story around these investments. I know the tough decisions you have to make on Beacon Hill, there's a lot more demand than there are dollars to go around. And some people say to me, how do you go up to the State House when, we have crumbling roads and bridges, and we have hunger, and we have poverty, and then you're sitting there saying, and can we get an investment in the arts? And for me, it's pretty easy, because I just say this, I say, I'll tell you what, legislator, here's the deal. You give me $1, I'll give you 8. You like that deal? And that's pretty much what's happening. For every dollar that's invested in the Mass Cultural Council, $8 goes back in the general fund that the legislature can use to help fix the crumbling roads and bridges and help address the other problems that are facing it. It's an investment that has a return in the Commonwealth, and not to mention that tens of thousands of people are employed in our cultural organizations and institutions, and they are a catalyst and a spark for revitalization of our downtowns, some of which need that new energy. And you know what else they do? It brings people together. Our cultural district program, it creates partnerships.
I think I've seen that. I wanted to ask you about that, because I see that in Plymouth more so. People working, the arts working together.
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit, about that cultural distinction that Plymouth had, and what does that mean to a community like Plymouth?
Well, I'll tell you, in the context of the cultural district program, which we absolutely love, and one thing I will say, when we started this program, and it's over 3 years ago, there was no money for it. We went to the legislature and we said, we want to start a cultural district program where you give us authorization, and we don't want any money. Look at that smile. Look at that smile.
Legislators love to hear that.
What's the catch?
What's the catch?
Yet. So anyway, we started the program, and this is where we employ kind of our motto at the Mass Cultural Council, which is creativity before capital. What we did is we invited communities across Massachusetts to apply for a cultural district. And a cultural district is really what we call a sense of place initiative. It's really built on what is real and special and authentic about your place. And as you were saying, we don't have cookie cutter places here in Massachusetts.
None
Every
of them
single
are alike.
place rooted and authentic and a great sense of pride and history and authenticity. So think about what it is that's special about your place. And then we want you to sort of think about designing a walkable, compact place where you can kind of feel the edges of it, that's based on that authentic idea and that authentic story. Well, I'm telling you, it was not a particularly easy application, because first of all, you had to get a resolution passed by the City Council or the Board of Selectmen, because we didn't want this to be a one-off. We wanted this to be built into the planning of the city or town. And then you had to give us a map. You had to do an inventory of all the assets within your map. You had to have a partnership created. You had to have governance. You had to have a marketing plan. You had to have a programming plan. You had to have a budget. I mean, you had to have all these elements in place. And then you applied, and then we reviewed it, and then we came out and did a site visit and walked all over the district, and then we came back and we reviewed and we negotiated, and then we went to the council, and then you were designated and you had an opportunity to buy signs for $200.
That was the first iteration.
But the enthusiasm was huge, because people love their town. And this was a way to stand up straight and tell and say, look what we have here in Plymouth. Look at our story. Look at how important. It really sparked civic pride and civic ownership. You know, in a certain respect, the Cultural District program is about attracting visitors and telling the outsiders what we have. But it's every bit as much for the people who live. We say a great place to live is a great place to visit. And it really was building community partnerships and community pride first before we invite the visitors. Now, as luck would have it, the economy got a little better here in Massachusetts, and we were, through the wisdom of the Great and General Court, offered a larger budget this past year. And so the very first thing we did is we provided grants for all of our cultural districts.
That's terrific. And the structure of your group, do you have a board of directors?
We have a council
You have
that is
council.
appointed by the governor.
Yeah.
We are a state agency, but we are an independent state agency.
That's it.
So we're not in the executive branch as some agencies are. And the thing that's nice about that, I kind of say we're in political Switzerland, because we really get along well with everybody. We work well with the House, with the Senate, with the executive branch, and we think it works very well in Massachusetts this way.
Yeah, it does. Let's turn to the Plymouth 400.
Yes.
Okay. And again, I know Anita's a big fan of this.
Absolutely.
But let's talk about some of the things you've done over the last couple of years, and what do we have to look forward to?
So well, I started 2 years ago this month, and literally a board of directors for many years had been in place and had done some very good groundwork. And one of the first things they did was they hired Prosody Creative Services, which was the company that actually mounted the Jamestown 400th in 2007, and did the events and programs for that, and helped with the strategic planning. So a strategic plan was in place when I started, and that was fantastic. We didn't have a staff. We had one staff member who was part-time to begin with, and then I was hired, and then we grew our staff to 3 full-timers and a part-timer. And so that's where we're at. We do work with consultants. We have come leaps and bounds from that moment in time. We do 3 pre-commemoration events now. We work with Plymouth, England on one of them called Illuminate, and we do that annually along with Plymouth, England, different times, but we usually share some video on that. We want to see that grow to be national and international, and to be almost like a pop-up event, so that we created an app for it, and we want to entice all the Plymouths across the United States and across the world to join us by doing their own Illuminate event. And you can use this app with the 3 of us here. We could do our own little candle lighting ceremony, or you could do it at a family function or in a church, or you could have an event outdoors or indoors. So that's the kind of traction we've been getting. We've also been working. About a third of my time is spent working with legislators, both on the local, state, and federal levels. And so we've made some good headway, certainly locally. The town of Plymouth has been a great supporter and continues to be a great supporter. And
The state's been a little slow, but talk about what
yeah,
the state
so,
is starting to do
so
now.
the state, there was a state commission, an executive order with the last administration that never actually took off. The commission itself never met, ever, in 8 years. So, so our new administration, it took us a while to convince the governor and the legislature that this was a viable economic development project. And however, last year we decided we would bring in other communities that also have pretty significant 400th anniversaries, like the city of Quincy, which is the city of 2 presidents. There's not too many of those around. Like Salem, the places you can find in a history book. And then Boston, which is 2030. So Quincy's 2025, Salem's 2026, Boston's 2030. They all turn 400. And then I realized, wait a minute, we're the only state in the country where this is going to happen. And it's not just those cities, it's Gloucester and Taunton, and there's a bunch of this whole list that you don't find in a history book, but certainly can benefit. So we started the Massachusetts 400 Forum last year. We invited those communities, those legislators. We had a great slate of events, and we did it again this year. And this year's, we had Jay Ash, the Secretary of Housing and Economic Development, who was our keynote speaker. And Jay got the whole idea of Massachusetts 400 when we presented it to him. He saw the potential right away.
And he didn't know a thing about it.
Nothing. He knew nothing about it, but I gave him the economic impact statement from the Jamestown 400. I showed him what the UK was doing for our anniversary, really, I mean, when you look at it, and also a shared history there. And I gave him our information as well, and all of our messaging and all of that, and he sat down and read that, and that impressed me, because I could tell he read it, because he came back to Vinny actually and said, I get it. This is a great program. It's a platform for cultural and heritage tourism over the next 14, 15 years. And beyond, if we want to keep rolling with this, Massachusetts is the anniversary state. So that was great this year. We also had the mayors of the city of Quincy, the city of Salem. We had a representative from the city of Boston's from the mayor's office, and we had, of course, Ken DeVaris, who's our head of our select board, speaking. We had our counterparts in the Netherlands this year. So last year we had our UK visitors here during the forum. This year we had our Netherlands counterparts who are planning their 400th, the Pilgrim 400th, Mayflower 400th anniversary over there, and we're just going to continue to roll with that.
Everyone's getting it on the act, huh? It's really
Everyone,
becoming
and
international.
the thing is, we wanted it to be national. We didn't realize it was going to go international first, and that our international friends were going to get it. But they are looking at this as an economic development project as well.
So the state commission
Yes.
should be coming out soon.
Yes, in the spring.
And how do you see that that's going to help with the 400th celebration?
So what we've asked for on this iteration of the State Commission is that the department heads of all of the major agencies of the state, so Anita, it would be one of those, but we also asked for specific industries that could help us in the planning and execution of this. So technology will be a very big piece of this. We will not be able to reach everybody. We will not be able to have everyone come here, but we certainly can reach out through technology and make sure that the historic accuracy of this historic period in time is right on, that it's culturally inclusive, that all of the themes are out there and people can do their own commemorations across the country. That's one of the ways. We also have been working with them on in terms of lodging, in terms of having someone from the education industry, not necessarily the education department, but an industrial group like Houghton Mifflin or somebody like that.
Yeah.
So we've asked for heads of industry in Boston in these several disciplines.
And they'll be able to help raise the additional funds. Millions of dollars are going to be needed. It'll help leverage the federal commission as well.
That is correct.
Which is so needed, and it really gets not just the Plymouth area, not just nationally, but internationally.
Right.
So you're doing a great job, Michele. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For what you're doing, Anita. Thank you so much for coming by today. We appreciate that, and we look forward to working with you over the next several years.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt.
I would like to thank my guests today, Michele and Anita, for a very informative show today. I also like to thank all the folks here from PAC TV for another great show. And thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time on State Matters.